Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 23 of Code Geass R2. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, things have hit the fan in a big way. Pendragon, the Imperial capital Britannia, was destroyed, and Nunnally, if not necessarily well, is certainly alive and now morally opposed to Lelouch, which... man, things are decidedly not good on all sides. I mean, people are already sort of doom posting about Pendragon being destroyed, but that's not the end of things. So, this business with Nunnally is interesting for multiple reasons, because on the one hand, Lelouch would be morally hard-pressed to fight her, right? He just wouldn't want to do it. But from a pragmatic point of view, he couldn't Geass her, I don't believe, seeing as how she's blind, although we've learned that blindness is merely psychosomatic rather than physical. But what doesn't quite add up to me is that Nunnally's just sort of okay with the bombing and destruction of Pendragon. I mean, I get, she is justifiably upset at both Lelouch and Suzaku for effectively lying by omission, but I feel like being a party to killing isn't the answer necessarily. So, Schneisel's playing an interesting game here by turning Nunnally against Lelouch, because on the one hand, she might be a better monarch in the sense that she's a kind person, but okay. Alright, so Lelouch is up to something here, just talking down to Nunnally like this. I mean, I think it's fair to see from the way he's talking and the way his hands are shaking that, he's telling a fib here. Oh. Wow, that's gotta be a remarkably hard thing for him to do, to just, threaten to just crush Nunnally like that if she opposes him. Okay. I've been toying around with the idea that this is all a sort of a gamble on Lelouch's part, because, the way he's sort of abandoned the carrot and favored the stick, so to speak, with the United Federation, I get the feeling that between that and declaring himself to be an enemy of the world, if he's sort of setting up a sort of a sacrificial play here, whereby essentially he takes on all the negative aspects of the Britannian Empire upon himself, and, with the end of his reign, a new person, likely Nunnally could ascend to the throne and thus be beloved by everyone and able to rule kindly and justly. Okay, so I guess we have Lelouch's real feelings here, why C2 did you not tell me about Nunnally? And I guess the answer is she didn't know, but Oh boy. So Lelouch is having a real one, which, that's understandable, but I feel like, he certainly did put up a front here saying like, look, Nunnally, I don't care about you, I wasn't doing this for you and all that. But I feel like what he should be doing is plotting to get her out of Schneisel's hands. Although Suzaku's not remarkably concerned one way or the other, he's more concerned about the this Zero Requiem plan they keep talking about. So, unless I've missed something, which is indeed possible, I don't think they've expounded on what this plan entails, but a requiem, I believe, is a song you... Maybe you don't play it at a funeral, that's a dirge, but it's sort of like a song for the dead. So I'm wondering if maybe my guess about Lelouch is correct, and that he's not planning on surviving in the long run. So, unfortunately for Nina, she's now witnessing the consequences of her actions. It turns out nuclear proliferation with a bunch of madmen here ends with the devices being used. And, it was bad enough when it was Tokyo, but Tokyo was at least a battleground. Pendragon was not within a war zone or anything like that, so for it to have been bombed and wiped off the map, I feel like maybe now might be a good time for Nina to have a breakdown. I didn't particularly dislike her initially, notwithstanding what she did to poor Mr. Table, but she is a remarkably unsympathetic character, considering all the stuff she does. It's like, yeah, I can understand going off the deep end regarding Cornelia and the stuff that happened to her, but I don't know, if my girlfriend were to be killed, I don't think I'd start building bombs, nuclear or otherwise, That isn't to say I wouldn't be upset, but I feel like, I don't know, maybe I've got a bit more self-restraint. So, speaking of restraint, it seems like Schneisel is not bound by that concept. He seems prepared to wipe off every major city off the face of the earth in the Britannian Empire. And, yeah, that's interesting, Cornelia's saying, what, are you trying to make everyone obey you out of fear? And it seems like the answer is yes. So, assuming Schneisel intends to ascend to the throne after deposing Lelouch, it really seems like the common folk are kind of cut between a rock and a hard place, with both Schneisel and Lelouch seemingly being poor options. Ooh. Okay, so our slimy journalist friend is now cozying up to Schneisel. I mean, I guess he had been before, but I feel like after the events of the past few episodes, he might reconsider, but... Man, far be it from a journalist to think rationally, I suppose? Ooh. Alright, so Schneisel's talking real dangerously here, that, yeah, it might take 1 billion or 2 deaths, but, the peace will be everlasting once that happens. And I guess this 1 billion or 2 deaths is, starting with Cornelia. Rest in peace. She was, kind of an unsavory character sometimes, but at least she had principles. I can say that for her. She probably didn't deserve this. So, a couple episodes, I was sort of privately wondering to myself how things could possibly get wrapped up in so few episodes. And at this point, I get the feeling that Nunnally's gonna sit on the throne at the end of this. Something's gonna happen. Actually, I feel like Schneisel and Lelouch are probably going to kill each other mutually. And then when all is said and done, Nunnally will be, the highest remaining person of royal descent who can sit on the throne, and perhaps the only one willing to do so. Well... I shouldn't say that. She wouldn't be the only one willing to do so, but I guess the one who's willing to do so and also has good intentions and the will to do what is right. Because I feel like all these other characters, they all have the will to do what they view as right, but they're also willing to kill many, many people in order to do that. And I feel like once you start doing that, things start going sideways. It's not that sometimes you can't do things without killing people, but I feel like once you get too comfortable with doing stuff like that, things have a tendency to spiral. Because once you start thinking of casualties as merely numbers on a screen, I don't know, I feel like you lose a bit of humanity. So, more nightmare frames are being constructed, and I'm wondering who is intended to pilot them. If these are sort of like Knight of the Round type suits to be piloted by Lelouch's Royal Guard or something to that effect. With the whole brigade from the R&D division developing them, I imagine they're going to be pretty tricked out. The question is, will they be armed with the Flea? I mean, in all likelihood, no, but I feel like Lelouch... I feel like he couldn't pass up a weapon like that. Even if only the Lancelot Albion is currently equipped. Man, things are getting kind of heavy. We're being shown stuff through like a little musical montage, but between like these new nightmare frames being developed, seeming alliances between the former Black Knights and former Knights of the Round, and like that little meaningful shot between Villetta and Ogi, I feel like something's gonna come to a head here, and it's not gonna be good. I mean, with like Villetta holding her hand over her stomach like that, like, sometimes foreshadowing is fairly subtle, but I think I know what that means. And in all likelihood, I feel like Ogi's gonna get it, probably in pretty short order. So, looking at the maps of the front lines and everything, it seems like things are pretty balanced. But at the same time, the Black Knights and the Chinese Federation and the remnants of them, like, they seem to be unwilling to leverage the Damocles, which is to their benefit, I think, I feel like the citizenry doesn't like watching the nobility glass cities like that. But at the same time, it's not something Lelouch can afford to count out, Because Schneisel's certainly demonstrated the will to use it. Even if it is certainly morally dubious and optically unsound, that's no reason why he wouldn't use it if he's already sort of resigned himself to killing a couple billion people. So things are interesting. All the figureheads, Schneisel and Lelouch, are sort of giving their rousing speeches to their troops like things aren't going to be an absolute bloodbath in pretty short order. And man, it seems like everyone's kind of apprehensive about this, Kellan especially, because I feel like she's probably in a good position to try and snipe Lelouch quickly with the Gurren, but at the same time, I don't know if she necessarily has the will or if she would be able to get around good old Agent Orange. We've seen a little bit more of Jeremiah. I quite enjoy him. I like him being, this extreme loyalist for Lelouch. Ooh. So Kellan's wondering how Lelouch can go so far, but, I feel like using hostages is a little bit lower on the totem pole than glassing an entirely uninvolved city. So I guess this is probably a smart tactic on Lelouch's part, because, he knows these particular hostages, they mean nothing to Schneizel, but they mean a hell of a lot to the people under him. So I guess this does kind of take Damocles off the table unless Schneizel wants to rupture his coalition here. So I guess it seems like it's just going to be a conventional battle, Damocles is temporarily out of action, and now, I guess the shooting's going to start. I guess the question is, who's going to survive this battle? Because I feel like this late in the game, episode 23 out of 25, it's probably time for some significant death and destruction here. There's an eerie sort of calmness as all the formations start moving and heading towards one another. Just watching it on a screen doesn't really do it justice, seeing all the little formations move around and all that. I suppose when you fight a battle at this scale, there's no way to really tell what's going on unless you're looking at a gigantic screen. But at the same time, I feel like that sort of disconnects the commanders from the actual goings-on the ground, Because, they're giving all these commands about, adjust squad by this many degrees, change your heading and all that, but, those orders will only do so much once the shooting starts, And it is telling that this battle so far, there hasn't been any shooting. They're mainly focusing on deploying and adjusting formations. Lelouch and Schneizel are already thinking 30 steps ahead effectively, so I guess the question is, how can they achieve the best possible positioning before actually firing a shot? Unfortunately, it seems like Schneizel is winning out here. It's interesting that once all the formations are sort of in place, they're sending out champions effectively. Jinki, Kalen, Nero, I believe, and likewise Lelouch is deploying Suzaku and a couple other elite troops, rather than all the formations swarming at each other en masse. It is interesting because with nightmare frames and all that, there aren't that many units, so I feel like things would almost devolve back to medieval tactics, ranks and files and all that, where holding formation is absolutely critical. But there's also an extra element in that they have to fight in 3 dimensions, which isn't something you have to worry about in, conventional infantry warfare or naval warfare. You're sort of constrained to 2 dimensions, therefore the tactics are somewhat simpler, but once you add in verticality, things become very difficult indeed. And I guess Lelouch is kind of feeling that now, because it seems as though it's the Black Knights who are really sort of turning things against him. It's also interesting that it seems as though the Geass on the soldiers is a negative. Depending on how Lelouch worded the Geass when he cast it upon them, that might rule out, well, it certainly rules out free will. I believe he said, you guys are now my slaves, but, I guess that would sort of override, thinking and decision making, which it's rather unfortunate if you're trying to lead an army, because while following orders is important, there is some degree of individual thought that is necessary, discernment and discretion and all that. So I guess once again Lelouch, he's up to something, Yeah, it really does seem like he just sort of lured Schneizel over the volcano, and once they were overextended, he just, let go with it. He always does that every time. Every time it seems like he's losing, it really is just a masterful ploy on his part. And so it seems like Valletta will survive this encounter by virtue of not being there. But at the same time, Ogi, who was on the ship, he seems to have gotten caught up in the blast, so, Ooh. This is actually quite interesting, because, I wonder if this action here is going to seal things, because I could imagine Valletta being very, very upset indeed about this, and perhaps willing to do something about it. So, maybe rather than Lelouch and Schneizel killing each other mutually, perhaps Lelouch is victorious, but Valletta kills him. Oh. Schneizel gave Nunnally the button. Oh. Oh my god. I didn't think she'd be able to do it, but she pushed the button. Oh dear. Okay, well, I guess I'm reevaluating my thoughts in real time. If Nunnally has the capacity to push the button, then I don't think she's fit to rule anymore, Oh dear indeed. Well, maybe the throne won't pass to anyone. Maybe it'll just be stuck with all sorts of intermittent fighting between various claimants. Ah, man. I mean, at least Nunnally wasn't, jumping in on a city or something, but that she would push the button at all is deeply disconcerting to me. Oh, man. I mean, I guess I can sort of forgive her because this is a stressful situation and things are just bad all around, but I don't know, man. There's a moral cost associated with pushing that button, and there's no taking that back. It's not good, man. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.